Hey everybody, it's Ron at Becoming Enlightened Together. So we're going to do another reading. Told you I was going to do a couple today, so here we go. Now the overall energy for the week remains the same with Kenaz in the upright. And Kenaz again is about inspiration. It's about creativity. It's like that light bulb going off over your head, when you get that the answer to your question or that idea that invokes some type of creativity or inspiration, like I just stated. Okay, it talks about you know power being available presently for you. It talks about knowledge, technical abilities, even. It talks about rapport, passion, lust, sexual love. So it's got a varied meaning. And as I explained in the last one, there's a lot, that's tied together in terms of, things that go on in our head and the physical act that we call sex, whatever the case may be. In fact, 90% of it is in your head anyways, right? So you can make something far more erotic that way or far less. In fact, it can even, especially in terms of men and so on, it can have a detrimental effect. When you got too many bad things that are going on in their head, preoccupied and so on, it could lead to erectile dysfunction and so many other things that we see so prevalent in our world today. And my personal opinion is that they, because of a high level population control agenda, which I could easily prove. I've even written a song about it. I've got a tremendous amount of actual documentation, including, Senate, congressional, international reports, comments, and so on from very, very high level, well known personalities as to what they literally are up to in regards to minimizing the population on this planet. Now, some of you may actually go along with that. Um, I would say it would be an error. You bought into the propaganda that they sell to us of 8 billion souls on this planet being far more than can be taken care of. The way that things are being done by those who we have put in control of our resources, our politicians, and so on, I would say the answer to that is probably very much true. So, I would say that there are far better ways of managing resources and producing the things that we need for this planet and its many inhabitants. And I would also go as far as to say we could do it not only in a far more economical way, but it would be in a way that would be more um, kind to the environment, to this planet as a whole and its many other inhabitants. But and to give you some reference as to why I say what I'm saying, because I always back everything that I'm saying with facts. I've got a tremendous amount of information I have stored, to back up the things that I say and claim. It's not conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy. It's a whole different ballgame when you have facts. But the point of the matter is you can put the entire 8 billion world's population into the state of California and Alaska, and they would live at a level, you could say, which is American level in terms of the amount of square foot would be allowed for every human being and everything else, which would mean the rest of the entire planet would be completely unoccupied. So all I can say is that we're not managing our resources properly because those who are in charge of it are basically of a different mindset than you and I, and they have very little to no empathy whatsoever for life in general. And yes, I know it's a bold and brash statement, but it's true nonetheless. Alright, now I really went off in the right field with that one, so let me go ahead and get back into the reading, because the reading itself is pretty positive for the most part. The present energy is that of Wunyo. Now, the present energy, being Wunyo, it's one of the so-called wishing runes. It's a powerful and positive, energy. It talks about the wind. And when we talk about wind, we're talking about air, or, in terms of tarot, the intellect, thinking, and so on. but it talks about harmony. It talks about joy and blessings in the runic sense. It talks about affection and desires. It talks about pleasure and fellowship, prosperity. It talks about ecstasy and glory. It talks about spiritual rewards, success, and recognition of one's own worth. So, I mean, that's a very, very, very positive rune. Alright, so that's our present energy. Now, the obstacles and challenges that we have is another very positive rune, but in this case, it is in the reversal, so Sowilo. It's one that's been made, if you will, infamous because of the Nazi SS during World War II. They incorporated it as part of that regalia. But in the reverse, it talks about someone who is self-centered, somebody who has false goals, follows bad or gives bad counsel, somebody who's basically just a false person, you know. Talks about somebody who's gullible, somebody who's destructive, somebody who seeks retribution for some perceived wrong. So justice or lack of justice is also part of this. And of course, vanity and the casting down of vanity by the gods themselves. So hopefully my collective is not wallowing in this type of energy, but it is under our obstacles and challenges, so it is something that each and every one of us could obviously fall within if we allow ourselves to fall into things such as self-pity and things of that nature, or not taking responsibility for some of our own actions and decisions. And I know how hard that can be. You know, I'm human, I make mistakes, and I've had to go through all of this as well, but it's always best and most honorable to accept your responsibility, to admit your mistakes, even when those mistakes and the repercussions of them could be harsh. Accept them and deal with them, because it'd be far, far less harsh than it would be if you continue to deny them, try to cover them up, and then they're found out. Nobody will ever trust you or believe you, and it's going to make your life far more difficult to live. Trust me. Now, I'm not saying because I have done those things per se. You know, I mean, we've all told what we would call classically white lies or whatever the case may be, sometimes even with the mindset of protecting somebody else, not wanting to hurt them. But in the end, a lie is a lie, truth is the truth, okay? And there's very little gray area. Some would argue with that, but you incorporate even the smallest mistruth into a statement, the statement itself is no longer true, okay? So regardless of how big or small that sort of perceived untruth is. So just be honest, be sincere. You know, again, in terms of Christianity, let your yea be yea, your nay be nay, and remember that your tongue is basically looked at as a sword in terms of the damage that can be done with it, with your words. Okay, you can edify and bring great life into something, or you can actually destroy and, you know, perhaps even create death with your words. So choose them wisely. Now, in terms of our help and advice, we have a rune called Laguz, and Laguz is in the upright. It's often used for those things which are water related, and of course, again, in terms of the tarot, water relates to emotions, where air is intellect, water relates mostly to emotions and the feminine aspect. So, in terms of this, we're talking about all things water, rivers, lakes, streams, the movement of water, the flow, the leaking of water, and same thing with emotions. Okay, it talks about basically renewal of life. It talks about those things which are feminine, you know, female fertility, intuition. It talks about imagination and psychic powers and abilities. It talks about, you know, a person's fantasies, those things which are mysterious, the unknown, the underworld itself, And it also talks about success in both travel and in acquisition. So overall, it's a very powerful energy in terms of uncovering those things which are unknown, and it's one that we would use in shamanic aspects in many cases, combined with other energies. All right, and now finally, future outcome is yet another very powerful rune, and it's Algis in the upright. Now again, it's the one that Winston Churchill made very, very popular and famous in World War II. He'd always flash it as the peace sign. It became incorporated in the 1960s hippie movement and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how well versed most of the people that had done or incorporated that symbol into their way of doing things, how knowledgeable they are of where these types of things came from. But Winston Churchill himself was a highly initiated druid, so he knew all about, Celtic mythology, the Norse, and things of that nature. But what does it mean? It means basically elk, sedge. So it talks about things such as friendship, a person's soul, optimism and aspirations. Again, it talks about being fortunate, protection, a shield, the urge to protect oneself and others from harm, the guardianship, so to speak. It talks about defense, the warding off of evil. It talks about connection with the gods. It talks about a higher life and intuition again. So lots about intuition in this reading. And it talks also about keeping hold of one's success, either won or earned. And that's pretty much, it in terms of the positivity. There are a lot of very good and positive aspects. So a lot of what we're seeing in today's reading has to do with things which are basically, hidden, either intellectually or physically. So I basically am going to capitalize on that mind frame in this particular regard. So basically, learn to trust and practice using your intuition, and your psychic abilities also increase with your continual practice of learning to trust your intuition. It is something that I think the majority of us as human beings are indeed born with, but we have to foster, we have to train, we have to learn to believe and to trust and to experience. And through those experiences, we learn that we can trust our intuition. Okay? So with that being said, I will leave you, and we will do another reading here very shortly. Okay? Until then, as always, stay victorious, and I'll see you again very soon. God bless.